Hi, this is Michaela Mahoney. Today is going to be our first lesson on the clarinet. I'm going to teach you how to take the instrument out of the case, how to put it together, how to take it apart after playing, and I'm also going to teach the first couple notes of the clarinet. So let's get started. The first thing that I want to talk about is taking the clarinet out of the case. I feel that that's one of the most important parts to think about before even playing the clarinet. We want to make sure that when we open the case, we're opening it from the top, because otherwise the clarinet's going to fall out onto the ground. So, the easiest way to think about this is in most cases, the handle is actually attached to the bottom of the case. This assures that when you open the latches, that the clarinet doesn't fall out on the floor. Also, something that I suggest for younger kids especially is putting tape with their name on it on the top, so then they know where the top is and where the bottom is, especially younger kids, because sometimes it doesn't really correlate with the fact that the handle's on the bottom. So I think that that's probably the best way to assure that they don't open it the opposite way. So before we open the case and before we start putting the clarinet together, I want to talk about sitting position. So the sitting position when playing clarinet, we want to make sure that you are sitting on the edge of your seat. We want to make sure that you're not leaning back onto the chair, because otherwise you're not going to get the best air support and breath control that we want in order to play, especially the higher range on the clarinet. So we want to make sure that your butt is pretty much on the edge of the seat, and also a good way to test this is standing up and sitting down with your clarinet. So as long as when you're holding your clarinet, you can stand up and sit back down comfortably, you're good. We don't want sitting on the way back of your chair, standing up, and falling back into the chair. That's too far, and we want to just make sure that you're on the edge of the seat. Another thing that's important when playing clarinet is you want to keep your feet flat on the floor. You can put them behind your chair or like under your chair a little bit if that's helpful. However, we mostly want them flat on the floor with your back straight up. So we want to be sitting up. Again, it helps with breast support, and it really helps with keeping your stomach and lungs really supported to help get all the air through the clarinet that you would need. Another important thing is to bring the clarinet to you. You don't want a student to end up bringing their head to the clarinet. That really restricts air and also hurts the neck at a certain point in time. So we want to make sure that when they play the clarinet, it's being brought to their face and it's not the opposite. A good little way to remember that is to bring the instrument to you. This was mentioned in the textbook, and I also think it's a cute little way to get it memorized for little kids especially. So it really assures that your head is going to be straight up and that your body position is great overall. Because if you're going to your instrument, you're starting to slouch over and your neck's starting to come down, and we want to avoid that as much as possible. Also, we want to make sure that your arms are back a little bit, but that your elbows are like out a little bit so that your breath is easier to get through, and you're able to support it a little bit more by putting more pressure on the ground and really locking yourself into the ground. So I think that's pretty good for breath support and making sure that your posture is great. Another thing that I want to talk about before putting the instrument together is that when you are putting it together, you want to make sure that your hands are close to the ends of the parts of the clarinet that you're putting together. So for example, if you're putting the bell onto the bottom joint, you want to make sure that you're holding the bottom joint at the bottom and the bell at the bottom. You also want to make sure that you're using twisting and pushing movements when putting together, and then when taking apart, you want to do twisting and pulling. You don't just want to pull it or push it in, since it affects the corks, and we don't want to hurt the instrument in any way, shape, or form. Another thing that's important is making sure that each of the pieces of the clarinet have cork grease on them, on the corks, because otherwise it makes it very difficult to put the pieces together. And then when we're opening and taking parts out of the clarinet, we want to make sure that we only take one piece out at a time. We don't want all the pieces of the clarinet laying on our chair or on our lap, because that assures that they'll probably fall on the floor, and we don't want that. We don't want to break the instrument. And one last thing, when putting the instrument back into the case after playing, we want to make sure that we have swabbed out the instrument with a cloth or some sort of towel or something, because otherwise, especially if it's a wood clarinet, it's going to start to erode, and there's going to be a lot of missing parts, and the keys are going to start to stick and all that stuff that we don't want to have to worry about. So yeah, that's pretty much all we have to worry about when putting it together. So let's do it. Let's put the clarinet together. Alright, so like I mentioned before, we want to make sure we're opening it from the top. So handles at the bottom, or if you have the name tag, that's perfect too. And I like to set it on a flat surface first instead of putting it on your lap, because you never know what's going to happen if you just put it on your lap. So we're going to open it, and this is what the case should look like from the inside. So the first part that we want to take out is the bell, and that is the lower part of the clarinet. It looks like a little handbell, which makes sense. So this is the bottom part of the clarinet, and we want to put the bottom joint onto the bell. I've already put grease on each of the corks, but this is what the cork grease should look like. It looks kind of like chapstick. It's not chapstick, so don't use it as chapstick, but we want to put a little bit on the edges of, or the bottom, I'm sorry, of the clarinet where the cork is. The cork kind of looks like wood. So we just put a little bit on there and make sure it's all the way around, and then it should be good to go. So the way we put it on is, again, we want to use the twisting and pushing motion. So we take the bottom joint of the clarinet and just kind of twist it and push on the clarinet, and we want to hold it from the bottom. So we're twisting and pushing until it's all the way in, and then we want to make sure that it looks something like this, and so that the keys are facing the front of you instead of this way. That's not quite how the clarinet's held. So we'll talk more about that a little bit later when the clarinet's actually together. But this is mostly how you want it to look with just the bell and the bottom joint. So the next part of the clarinet that we want to take out is the top joint, which just goes right on top of this guy. And the top joint looks like this. And again, we would want to make sure that we put cork grease on both sides, since this has two sides of cork. Since I already did that, it's not that big of a deal. So we'll want to, so this is very important, we want to make sure that we line up the bridge keys. So on the bottom joint, there is a little part, that's part of the bridge key, that we want to make sure that the other part from the top joint goes over, because then we can assure that that key is going to work great. So when we're putting it together, the buttons should line up. They should be pretty straight, and again, we want to make sure that the bridge key is in line with one another. So the bridge key is right here, and we want to make sure that that's like in a straight line, and that the top joint is over the bottom joint section of the bridge key. Awesome. And to assure that, we can press down the first couple keys, and the bridge key should actually come up from the bottom joint of the bridge key. You can see it a little bit moving right there, so we just want to make sure that that's in line with one another. So the next section is this little guy, which is called just the top. So again, we're going to try and use the twisting and pushing movements. So we'll just twist it and push it on. Easy enough. And then last but not least, we're going to put the mouthpiece on. So the mouthpiece is composed of 3 parts actually, and it comes with a little mouthpiece cover, which is helpful to use when taking apart. So the mouthpiece is the black section of the instrument that looks like a little triangle kind of. So again, we would want to make sure that this cork is greased as well. And every mouthpiece comes with a ligature, which assures and like keeps on the reed to the mouthpiece. It's very important, and we want to make sure that we always have the ligature. And another thing about the mouthpiece especially is we want to make sure that a couple minutes beforehand we had that we wet the reed. We don't want to use a dry reed. It's not gonna, no sound's gonna come out and nothing's gonna work out. Also, it's better to wet the reed with water instead of with your mouth. Either way is okay, but it assures the by using water, it assures that the reed will be clean and that the water won't take any of the wood or nutrients out of the wood so that it can vibrate easier. So, if for younger students, I would use a 2 to 2.5 reed. That's usually the best sort of reed for the younger players since it's not as thick. This is a 2.5, and I think that that's probably the best one to use again. So, the way we put the reed onto the mouthpiece is we want to make sure that the reed is lined up with the tip of the mouthpiece. So the tip is right here, and we want to make sure that there's a little bit of black showing at the top. We don't want the reed to go over the mouthpiece like that, because then it won't vibrate, and we don't want it really under, because then it won't vibrate at all. So we want it sort of in the middle, where it's almost at the tip, but there's a little bit of black showing. And then once we get that in line, we'll put the ligature on. So the ligature goes with the screws facing you. So it goes on just like this. And then we want to make sure that we don't screw it on too tight, because otherwise it won't vibrate. So at the end, that's what it should look like facing you. This is what the clarinet should look like. You should only have the thumb key and the bridge keys facing you, and then the rest of the keys facing out. So, holding position of the clarinet. On the back of the clarinet, there's a thumb rest. This is where your right thumb is going to be placed. So, your right hand is going to pretty much hold the weight of the clarinet. This assures that there's no pressure or anything else on any of the other fingers, and can really assure the safety of the instrument itself, because the right hand tends to be more dominant in most people. So you want to place your right thumb underneath the thumb rest, and then for your front fingers, you're gonna want to put your index finger on the top of the 3 holes, and then just go down for each other finger. Your middle one should go in the second one, and then your ring finger should go in the third one. Your pinky is going to be around the lower keys. These are the pinky keys. It's they help to get the lower notes on the instrument, and they're also very helpful with just more of a range for the instrument. So the pinky can be on any of the keys, just depends what the notes are that are going to be played. So this is the general holding position for the bottom of the clarinet. As for the top, that's where your left hand comes into play. So the left thumb is going to be put on the back thumb key. Now we want to make sure that when you put your thumb on the thumb key, that you're able to press the register key. Without taking your entire thumb off of the thumb key, because once you get up past certain notes, you're gonna have to put down the register key to make sure that you can get up into the other ranges. So that's where your right thumb goes, and then your index finger is going to go right on the first key, and again it's the same thing as your thumb. You're going to want to make sure that you can get up to this key to make sure that you can get A's out. And then your middle finger goes on the middle one, and your third finger goes, or your ring finger goes on the third key. So this is generally what your hand should look like when using the clarinet. This is the back and this is the front. So now I'm going to talk about the embouchure of how to play clarinet. So when playing clarinet, you're going to want to make sure that your chin is flat. We don't want to make your chin anything else because we want the bottom teeth, we want the bottom lip to be stretched flat over the bottom teeth and your lips around the mouthpiece. So it's kind of going to look like that a little bit without the mouthpiece. So another good way to think about making an embouchure is the chapstick analogy. I like that one because it's a practical way to look at how the embouchure is made. So if we pretend we're putting on chapstick, we go like this. So the bottom lip is over the bottom teeth, and it's pretty flat. Your chin's flat, and so are your lips. Your lips are pretty stretched out. So we want to keep that in mind, and let's pretend right now that we're putting on some chapstick. So putting on chapstick. Awesome. And now put the clarinet in your mouth. Good. So with your top lip, you want to make sure that the top lip is over the top of the mouthpiece, so you can see that your top lip's over it. And also your top teeth are going to be over it too. So it's kind of like the bottom lip too, but you're just not wrapping your top lip around your top teeth. So that's what the embouchure should look like from all sides. Great. So now that we know the embouchure, we can learn the first couple notes. So I'm going to teach the notes C, D, E, and G so that we can play Mary Had a Little Lamb. So the first note I'm going to teach you is C. C is the, you're just going to use your right hand for all of these notes, so we don't even really need to learn about the left hand yet. So C is going to be the thumb key. Your index finger is going to go on the first hole, middle finger on the second hole, and third ring finger on the third hole. So that would be C. So all three fingers and the thumb key. So C is going to sound like this. So in order to get a good sound out of the clarinet, we want to make sure we're pushing enough air through. We want to make sure that there's enough support. We also want to make sure that we're covering the holes enough. So I'll show what it would sound like if we weren't. So this is what it would sound like if we didn't cover the holes well enough. So the sound doesn't really tend to come out if we don't cover the holes, and also we tend to crack notes a lot more if we don't cover the holes all the way. So we want to make sure that we're doing that too. So that was C. Now we're going to go to D. D is easy enough. We just lift up the third finger, and it'll just be the thumb finger on the back, first finger and second finger on the first and second holes. So all we do to get from C to D is lift up the third finger. So D is going to sound like this. So let's do C to D now. So we'll go. Good. And we may crack. It depends. And now for the last note we're going to learn is F. Or I'm sorry, E. We're going to learn E. So E is just, again, you only lift up one finger. You're lifting up your middle finger this time. So now you're only going to have the thumb finger and your index finger on the one. So E sounds like this. So if we want to get from D to E, we put down your second finger and go. If we want to do C to D to E, we just go. Not too bad. So for all of those fingers, we want to make sure that we keep down the thumb finger. Now we can play Mary Had a Little Lamb. Oh, but I also have to teach you G. G is probably one of the easier ones to remember since it's no fingers at all. No thumb finger, no first, no second, no third. So G should sound something like this. So we have easy enough. So Mary Had a Little Lamb starts on E, so we're going to put down the first finger and the thumb finger. So you just go down E, D, C, and then we go back to D, and then E. Put down D, and then back to E, and then G, and then E, so there it is. There's Mary Had a Little Lamb. Not too bad. If we crack notes, that's okay. That's gonna happen. This is just a beginning video, so whatever happens, happens. But breast support really helps with making sure to not crack notes, making sure your fingers are covering the holes. Also really helpful. So now that we've done all that, we're gonna have to take the instrument apart and break it down. So my first step on taking the clarinet apart is to take off the mouthpiece. We always want to do top to bottom, and when we were putting it together we did bottom to top, so it's kind of doing the opposite this time. So when taking apart the clarinet, my first instinct is to take off the reed, because we don't want to bend it or anything when we're taking off the mouthpiece section of it. So we undo the ligature, undo the screws, the top screw first and the bottom screw second, and then we take off the ligature. And then I highly suggest washing the the reed, washing the reed through with water, and then putting it back into the reed case. I think that's really helpful. Also, I think these reed cases are very helpful because you can have more than one reed in a case, and you can go through each of the reeds when need be. So we would normally rinse the reed and put it back into the reed case. But for time's sake, I'm just going to put it back into the reed case for right now. Alright, so now we have the ligature and the mouthpiece, so now we can just take off the mouthpiece since it doesn't have the reed on it anymore. So instead of twisting and pushing, we're going to twist and pull to take it apart. So we want to make sure that we're twisting off the mouthpiece so that the cork doesn't come off, and easily enough we have the mouthpiece here. I like to wipe off my mouthpiece, and we should clean it every now and again with just water. Not too hot. We don't want to burn the plastic or anything if it's plastic, or harm the wood if it's wood. So we just kind of wipe it off, wipe it down, wipe it through. Normally each clarinet will come with a swab like this, and we want to wash this too every now and again because they get kind of gross. Alright, so once that's pretty clean, we can put the ligature back on. You don't have to screw it back on, but if you want to, that's okay. And then we find the mouthpiece cover back in the case and just put it back over. And then it should look like that. And then we'll put it back where it belongs in the case. So now the clarinet's going to look like this. So no mouthpiece. So now this is where I would take my swab and just kind of put it through. Most swabs come with a like weighted bottom, so you can put like this part of the swab through and it'll go down through the clarinet, and then you can just take it out of the bottom here, and then it should just go pretty easily through. And also we want to make sure that when we're doing this, we're not pressing down any of the keys and hurting the instrument. I like to do this a couple times just to get all the moisture out before I end up taking the rest of it apart. So let's see. I'll do it one more time. And we don't want to, if it gets stuck, we don't want to pull it out just in case it's stuck on something. You never know. Alright, so now that that's all cleaned out, we can take off the rest of the pieces. So we'll, again, start from the bottom down to the top. So we'll just take this, take that off, put it back where it belongs. And then we'll go to the top joint. Again, be careful not to push down any of the buttons. We don't want to break anything. So twist that off pretty easily and put that back. And if there's still a little bit of liquid coming out, you can just wipe that off too. And then last but not least, the bottom and the bell. And then we can put those back. Awesome. Alright, so now that we have ended up putting the clarinet back where it belongs, we can just lock it back up, and again make sure that we're closing it at the top of the clarinet case, facing up, so that when we open it again, we do not harm the clarinet in any way, shape, or form. Perfect. Alright, so thank you guys. This was a great first lesson, and I hope you guys had fun. Alright, thank you.